relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Some updates in the career of Fairuza Sharipova, who posted this image with a caption that reads, "Today, Gennady Mashyanov celebrates his birthday, coach to Dmitry Bivol, and now he's my coach. Let's all congratulate this outstanding human being. I will be returning from Thailand very soon and preparing for the title fight against the Malawi champion Ruth Chisale, led by Gennady Yurievich. My goal and my team's goal still remains a rematch with Katie Taylor for the Absolute World Championship."
We've been following the career of Fairuza Sharipova for years now here on the channel.
A fighter who I've often said isn't living up to her potential for outside reasons, what happens outside of the ring, rather, what doesn't happen.
She's a really good fighter.
Sporting a professional record of 15 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 8 knockouts. Those 2 losses.
The first loss came at the hands of Russia's own amateur standout, Sofia Ochiguava.
The dichotomy of those 2 fighters, Fairuza and Sofia, it's not dissimilar from what you see between Clarissa Shields and Franchon Cruz. There's a parallel there. Fairuza and Sofia, they made their professional debuts against each other, and Sofia won the fight.
Same way that Clarissa and Franchon made their pro debuts against each other.
And remained good friends afterwards. The same applies to Sofia and Fairuza.
Fairuza, who's now going to be trained by Dmitry Bivol's trainer, Gennady Mashyanov.
You can imagine how beneficial that might be for Fairuza moving forward. Fairuza, who's already a very talented boxer, already very skilled.
She gave a good account of herself opposite the ring, Katie Taylor, over a year ago.
Over a year later, enlisting the aid of Gennady Mashyanov, it's a welcome addition.
Now Fairuza Sharipova is set to return to action
opposite the ring, Malawi's own Ruth Chisale. Ruth, who sports a professional record of 12 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 7 knockouts.
having never been knocked out in 14 professional contests.
Ruth Chisale, who saw action 2 times last year, 2 times dropping a decision to South Africa's own Hedda Wolmarans in March, rebounding off the loss late last year in December.
A second-round technical knockout over Rukia Nasarite.
Ruth, she's been in there with 1 or 2 familiar fighters, 1 or 2 familiar faces. She dropped a decision to Lolita Muzeya back in 2017. That's the same Lolita Muzeya who was stopped by Savania Marshall. A few years before that, early on in her career, she made her professional debut opposite the ring, hard-punching Anisha Bashil. She actually fought Anisha 2 times and beat Anisha 2 times. She also racked up a solid win over then unbeaten Ornella Domini in 2017. She'll be opposite the ring, Fairuza Sharipova, in the near future. If you've seen Fairuza Sharipova in action, you'll know that she's got some of the same finer qualities that Katie Taylor has. Very good feet, good in-and-out game, good rapid-fire combinations. She's quick.
It's almost like an old-era Soviet version of Katie Taylor's base style.
There are some similarities between them, but I feel like Fairuza can't really unlock her true potential until she gets on a more regular schedule of activity. She's only fought once, just once, since dropping that decision to Katie Taylor.
A little over a year ago.
In December of 2021, she returned to action very recently in December of 2022, late last year.
Racked up a points decision win.
In terms of her boxing career, it was a year squandered, sitting out most of it and only returning to action towards the tail end of last year. I suppose that the saving grace for Fairuza is that she's still a very young fighter. She's only 28 years old. She still has plenty of time to get things going.
She can if they get her on a regular schedule of fights.
It's always been the issue for Fairuza Sharipova. Her career has always been to stop and start, juggling being a public personality over there in her native Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
Minor film role.
Yeah.
Now set to return to action in the near future, though we don't have an exact fight date yet.
She's enlisted the aid of Dmitry Bivol's trainer.
This is likely going to be billed as a lightweight contest. Lightweight, that's where Katie Taylor still reigns as that division's undisputed champion. And you read what Fairuza said. She means to get a Katie Taylor rematch. In truth, I don't think she's going to get one, but that doesn't mean she can't still make a splash in this division.
So we'll keep you posted and we'll talk more about the fight as this fight's date approaches.
In men's bridgerweight news, the word from out of Poland is that Knockout Boxing Promotions won the purse bid for the Lukas Rozanski versus Alen Babic vacant WBC bridgerweight title fight with a winning bid of $425,000. They beat out Matchroom, who bid just under that, at $350,000.
That's surprising.
That's a modest amount of money, is what that is, which is what I've been saying about the Bridgerweight division for the longest time. I've been saying that about the Bridgerweight division since its inception, that unless you can really start pouring money into this division, put on fights that people want to see, fights that sell tickets, fights that garner a lot of viewership,
It won't get off the ground.
$350,000 by way of Matchroom is a rather modest bid for Alen Babic's next fight, and they got beat out.
But as stated, this is hardly one of the glamour weights.
And this fight, the overall rights to it seem to matter more to the people at Knockout Boxing Promotions than they did to Matchroom, though I suspect that we might still be able to see the fight here in America by way of DAZN, because Knockout Boxing Promotions, they ain't got a U.S. broadcast partner.
Knockout Boxing Promotions is based out of Poland, where I've no doubts this fight is going to take place.
Knockout Boxing Promotions, who also happen to promote up-and-coming unbeaten featherweight in the women's featherweight division, Laura Grizab.
Fighter who we've talked about several times here on the channel.
I wouldn't be at all surprised to hear that Laura Grizab is set to fight on the undercard of this fight. This is going to be a decent-sized fight, a decent-sized show in Poland, more so than it would have been anywhere else, because everywhere else in the world, they're not familiar with either of these two guys, not that much.
Alen Babic over time has amassed a bit of a cult following in the United Kingdom.
But he isn't yet a big ticket seller over there. Not yet. Perhaps procuring the WBC's Bridgerweight title will assist in that effort to help make Alen Babic more of a draw, because this guy, he's made for TV. Anybody who's seen him fight before will tell you that.
Non-stop entertainment from start to finish. A welcome addition to any undercard Matchroom has put on, because when Alen's fighting, you'll know it's pure entertainment.
It's pure, unbridled, unadulterated action, though. The same thing that makes Alen Babic such a fun fighter to watch is the same thing that one day may backfire.
They call him the Savage, and they call him that for a reason. That's how he fights.
That's how he fights. He fights like a goddamn savage, a goddamn animal. He throws caution to the wind, throws big college frat boy punches.
Those looping shots and big hooks, everything he throws has bad intentions on it.
Everything, and that's worked for him so far, though. That's one of those things that works for you up until it doesn't. Well, it stopped working for him opposite the ring, Lukas Rozanski. I think the saving grace for Alen Babic is that it has been some time since Lukas Rozanski saw action, even if Lukas will have home field advantage.
It's been well over a year, close to 2, since Lukas Rozanski had a fight. He was last in action in May of 2021, well over a year ago.
Sporting a professional record of 14 wins, no losses and no draws, 13 knockouts, to Alen Babic's 11 wins, no losses, no draws, with 10 knockouts. This is a battle of the unbeatens, the battle of the unbeaten, albeit not very active fighters.
Lukas hasn't had a fight since May of 2021. Alen Babic hasn't had a fight since May of 2022. Neither one of these two guys have been all that productive the last 12 months, but at least Alen can say he has had a fight.
He has had a fight in the last 12 months, the fight with Adam Balski, though that's the only fight that he's had in the last 12 months.
You would have thought they got him a keep busy fight.
Not completely sure why Alen Babic wasn't more active last year. It was well within Matchroom's ability to get him a tick-over fight, 1 or 2. His activity rate in 2022 was a far cry from his activity rate, his frequency of fights in 2021. In 2021, he fought 4 times, whereas he just fought once in 2022.
The Adam Balski fight in May.
As stated, I really don't think that anybody was expecting to hear that Matchroom would get beat out by a regional, a local outfit in Poland.
That's a shocker.
Saving grace, I think, is that DAZN can still subsidize the fight by picking up the rights to it here in America, which shouldn't cost them all that much.
The rights to the fight in America, the United Kingdom as well.
I'm sure that the people at Knockout Boxing Promotions would be willing to sell DAZN the foreign rights to the fight on the premise that it's not like there's a bunch of networks here in America climbing over each other to show that fight anyway.
Same applies to the UK.
Feels like somebody's going to get stopped in this fight. It feels like somebody's going to get knocked out. It's just a question of who. Will it be Alen Babic or will it be Lukas Rozanski?
Who's going to get knocked out on Knockout Boxing Promotions Boxing Night in Poland? We'll find out shortly.
Perhaps DAZN and Matchroom are mitigating spending.
They didn't want to break the bank trying to win the rights for Babic versus Rozanski.
Perhaps they bid a modest amount of money deliberately on the premise that even if they don't win the rights to the fight, the overall rights to the fight, it might actually be cheaper to bid for the foreign rights to the fight. Let the fight happen on Knockout Boxing Night's dime.
Let Knockout Promotions pay for the fight, and let them pay the fighters. Let them do the show on their dime.
Bear the brunt of putting on the show, which might be cheaper for Matchroom and DAZN than paying for the show themselves. All they'll have to do is pick up the foreign rights to the fight, which might actually be cheaper than doing the show themselves. That may have been the hierarchy of thought, mitigating spending.
Because Matchroom is by far and wide a bigger promotional outfit than Knockout Boxing Promotions.
Has to be a reason they bid such a modest amount of money for that fight. Maybe they weren't really trying.
Maybe they have other interests.
Other areas and other interests they like to explore and expand upon, like signing new talent.
Signing network and promotional free agent Edgar Berlanga.
Eddie Hearn is actually playing with the idea of making a fight between Edgar and Canelo next year.
This guy's not going to be ready for Canelo by next year.
Puerto Rico's Edgar Berlanga parted ways with longtime promoter Bob Arum's Top Rank in early 2023 after a separation agreement following months of unsuccessful talks on how to proceed with Berlanga's career. Arum told ID Boxing on Saturday that the reason for the split was that Top Rank and Berlanga could not agree on the pace at which to move him. We had a different philosophy, and we didn't want to hold him back. He is bound and determined to proceed at a pace that we don't think he's ready for. The Brooklyn-born super middleweight contender will be a highly sought-after promotional free agent due to his sizable drawing power, which includes generating $500,000 at the gate 2 times at the Hulu Theater, Madison Square Garden in his hometown of New York.
Why are you yelling?
Berlanga's manager, Keith Connolly, does business with both Al Heyman's PBC and Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. On Monday, Hearn revealed to the DAZN Boxing Show his interest in working with Berlanga moving forward. This is following several cryptic Instagram story posts from Hearn and Berlanga indicating that they may work together in the future. Berlanga has also posted about Goldenboy's interest in signing him as well and making a Jaime Munguia fight. Hearn needs popular headliners for his U.S. stable, and it's clear that he believes one of those additions could come in the form of Edgar Berlanga, who he described as a big name and having big support. The British promoter also believes that the Puerto Rican has been the subject of unjust criticism after a few underwhelming performances. In boxing, people are very quick to criticize Judge. He had 16 first-round knockouts and then went the distance a couple of times, then apparently he's overrated. That's what happens in boxing.
You know, it wasn't just going the distance that got Edgar all that criticism. It's getting knocked on his ass by a non-puncher in Caceres.
Get one thing clear, that Caceres is a guy that was knocked out by a non-puncher in Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders at his best is a pure boxer, not a knockout guy, but he was able to stop Caceres where Edgar could not. Not only did Edgar not stop the guy, he got sat on his back pocket. The last 3 fights or so, Edgar Berlanga has looked anything but a wrecking machine, and that's what Top Rank was selling him as. A knockout merchant, a knockout machine.
Couldn't knock out Caceres, he couldn't knock out Steve Rolls, he couldn't knock out Romer and Gulo.
And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world that he didn't knock those 3 guys out if he at least looked good in those fights, looked capable, but he didn't.
I'll tell you the truth, Edgar Berlanga did not leave behind big shoes to fill over there at Top Rank. Their proliferation of unbeaten up-and-comers they're bringing through those ranks.
Keyshawn and Kelvin Davis, Shushu Carrington, Richard Torres, Jared Anderson.
Xander Zayas.
Believe you me, they're going to be all right. Edgar Berlanga won't be missed.
And if Eddie Hearn wants to pick him up, see what he can do with that guy, so be it.
Not only is Eddie Hearn interested in signing Berlanga, but he looks towards matching Berlanga with the biggest star in world boxing, Canelo Alvarez, who is a free agent but primarily works with Matchroom. If Berlanga can headline a couple of shows against high-level, world-ranked opposition and prove that he is a contender for Canelo Alvarez, you have a fantastic Mexican-Puerto Rican fight there, which could be big. But he has to establish himself as a world champion contender against that opposition, and I believe he can do it. Hearn closed off the interview by confirming his desire to make an approach and boasted about his relationship with Berlanga's manager. I'm sure we will speak to Keith Connolly, our friend, and the team to see if we're in the mix for Edgar Berlanga.
Eddie wants to match Edgar against Canelo. That fight don't make sense this year. That fight don't make sense next year. This kid's nowhere near ready.
He's not ready for somebody like that. You saw what he looked like with Roma Angulo. You saw what he looked like with Steve Rolls before him.
But Eddie wants him.
And he's not the only one. Oscar De La Hoya is also in hot pursuit of Edgar Berlanga, per some meetings they had earlier today.
It seems almost an oddity that a fighter of such limited boxing skill, limited ability, has become such a hot commodity that two major promotional outfits are in pursuit of him.
In spite of 3 consecutive lackluster showings, Goldenboy wants to do business with him, and so does Matchroom. The question is, what's the better fit for Edgar? And I've said it before, Matchroom does more shows on the East Coast. Matchroom does more shows in New York City than Goldenboy does.
I will say Goldenboy Promotions has 1 or 2 better options for Edgar than Matchroom does. They've got Gabriel Rosado, they've got Jaime Munguia,
they've got Shane Mosley's kid, they've got Bektamir Melikuziev, whereas what Eddie's talking about putting him in there with Canelo. This year or next year, that fight doesn't make any sense.
Munguia does.
Not that I think he would actually beat Jaime Munguia, because I don't. I think if you made that fight anywhere within the next 12 months, Jaime Munguia would punch this guy's head clean off his shoulders, but it is still a more winnable fight than a Canelo fight.
I think both Goldenboy and Matchroom, they can conjure up a couple of keep busy fights, a couple of tick-over fights for Edgar Berlanga to rebuild his confidence because he hasn't been looking good.
So he still is an unbeaten fighter, and he does do decent gates in the tri-state area, so there's value in him, and they can both keep him busy and build him up towards something. The question is, overall, which outfit is the better fit, Goldenboy Promotions or Matchroom? If he went with Matchroom, that wouldn't close the door on a potential Jaime Munguia fight.
Not completely, because in spite of Goldenboy and Matchroom being 2 separate outfits, they're on the same platform. They're both on the DAZN platform.
So you could still do the fight between Edgar and Jaime the same way that Goldenboy and Matchroom did the fight between Dimitri and Zerto.
Yeah, you can still do it.
It's neither here nor there. Seems like splitting hairs, because one way or another, it looks like Edgar Berlanga is going to wash up on the shores of DAZN after having parted ways with Top Rank and ESPN. That seems to be where he's going, whether it's by way of Goldenboy Promotions or Matchroom. It looks like in the very near future, Edgar's going to be boxing on the DAZN platform.
They're going to have to get creative with the matchmaking to make Edgar start looking good again.
Last 3 showings didn't lend themselves towards building his marquee value, but they can do it.
They can keep him busy for 2 to 3 fights this year.